welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into something really fundamental to your online experience,
Yeah.
something that's working away every time you browse, often without you even, noticing it.
Yeah.
Website cookies. Now, cookies might sound like a pretty basic term, maybe even a bit dry, but honestly, stick with us because these tiny bits of data are really at the core of how the modern web functions, and understanding them well, it unlocks some surprisingly interesting stuff.
That's exactly right. Think of it as sort of peeling back a layer of the internet you use constantly.
Yeah.
Our goal today is really to get a handle on these digital building blocks. We'll look at what they are, the vital role they play behind the scenes, the different kinds you run into, where they actually live on your devices, and even the testing that goes into making sure they work right and handle your info responsibly.
Okay. And our exploration today is based on material specifically focused on explaining and testing these cookies.
Precisely. Sources that really break down the nuts and bolts.
Okay, so let's get right down to it then. What is a website cookie in simple terms?
Well, imagine a website needing to remember something about your visit as you click from page to page. A cookie is essentially just a small text file. The website server sends it to your computer's hard drive.
Right.
This little file holds bits of information, and then every time your browser asks for another page from that same website, it sends that cookie back to the server.
So it's kind of like the website has a little sticky note to jog its memory about me during my visit.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. It's often described as a way for the site to maintain a sense of your identity for that specific session. Tracking their navigation within the site is the main job. The whole point is to make your interaction faster, more efficient.
Okay, I get the concept. Can you give us some, really concrete examples? Where do we actually see cookies working every day? Make it real for us.
Oh, absolutely. Think about filling up an online shopping cart.
Yeah.
Without cookies, the website would just forget what you added as soon as you click to another product page. It'll be impossible.
Right, they'll be annoying.
Totally. Or personalized experiences, like when a news site shows you articles based on what you've read before, that's usually cookies. They also power website analytics, helping sites understand, how people like you are clicking around.
Uh-huh.
And maybe the most convenient thing, staying logged into a website, you don't have to put your password in on every single page. That's cookies. And of course, targeted advertising relies heavily on tracking your activity through cookies too.
Wow, okay. That really puts it into perspective. They're doing a lot. So what's actually inside one of these cookie files? What are the key bits of information?
Well, basically, every cookie has three main parts. First, it notes the name of the server that sent the cookie in the first place.
Okay.
Second, it specifies the cookie's lifetime, basically, how long it's supposed to stick around on your computer.
Ah.
And the third, really crucial part, is the value itself. This is often just a randomly generated unique string of characters that the website uses to identify your specific browser during your visit.
Interesting. So not all these digital crumbs are the same then? I think I've heard there are different kinds.
You have indeed. The two main types you'll hear about are session cookies and persistent cookies.
Session and persistent.
Session cookies are temporary. They only last for as long as your browser window is open. The moment you close your browser, poof, they're gone, deleted automatically.
Okay, transient.
Exactly. Persistent cookies, though, they're designed to hang around for longer. They get stored, well, permanently isn't quite the right word, but for a set period on your device. They can last for days, weeks, months, sometimes even years, depending on how the website set up their expiration date.
Okay, so these files are definitely being saved onto our computers. Where exactly can we, find these digital breadcrumbs if we wanted to look?
That's a good question, and the answer, well, it kind of depends on which web browser you're using. Generally speaking, they're stored as simple text files somewhere on your computer's hard drive.
Right, but where specifically? Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you're using Mozilla Firefox. You can typically find your cookies somewhere in the browser's settings menu. You'd probably go to Tools, then Options, look for Privacy or Privacy and Security.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, you'll usually find an option like Manage Cookies and Site Data, or maybe Remove Individual Cookies. Clicking on that will let you see the cookies stored by different sites.
I see.
Now, if you were using, say, an older version of Internet Explorer, the cookies were often just dumped in a specific folder, something like See Documents and Settings, then your username, then cookies.
Ah, a direct folder path.
Yeah. But remember, these exact menu names and folder locations can shift a bit as browsers get updated. The main thing is your browser tucks these files away in a specific spot on your system.
Got it. So the people building websites, they're the ones creating these cookies. How do they actually make sure they're working properly and, importantly, not causing security problems? Sounds like there's a whole testing process.
Oh, absolutely. Cookie testing is really a vital part of web development. It's all about guaranteeing both functionality and security. Developers have a whole checklist, really.
Okay.
One basic test is just to disable cookies entirely in the browser settings and then try using the main parts of the website. Does the login break? Can you add things to the cart? This quickly shows what relies on cookies.
That makes sense. A simple on-off test. What else?
Well, another technique is to intentionally corrupt cookies.
Corrupt them. How?
Developers might use browser tools or sometimes even manually edit the cookie's data, just sticking in random values or messing up the format. This helps them see how the website reacts. Does it crash? Does it handle the bad data gracefully?
Stress testing it.
Exactly. And encryption is absolutely critical, especially for sensitive stuff. Any information like usernames, passwords, personal details, if it has to be in a cookie, which isn't always ideal, it must be encrypted before being sent to your browser. That prevents eavesdropping.
Definitely crucial. You wouldn't want that flying around in plain text. What about different browsers? Do cookies always work the same way in Chrome versus Firefox, for instance?
That's another key testing point. Developers need to check that the website creates cookies correctly and that they function as expected across all the major browsers. Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, you name it.
Right. Consistency matters.
It really does for the user experience. They also rigorously test cookie deletion. Like when you explicitly log out of a website, the session cookies associated with that login should be properly deleted from your browser right away.
Yeah.
They have to verify that cleanup process works.
Okay. And what happens if, say, I go into my browser settings and just delete the cookies for a site? How should the site handle that?
Yeah, that's another common test. Developers will manually clear cookies for their site and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Does the site fall apart? Or does it maybe just prompt you to log in again? Do your personalized settings get wiped? They need to make sure the site can recover gracefully if the cookies suddenly vanish.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about privacy? Can one website peek at the cookies from another website?
That's a huge privacy and security check. A fundamental test is confirming that cookies set by, say, your banking website cannot be accessed or read by some random news site you visit later. They absolutely should be isolated to their own domain.
That's a relief. Definitely important. Anything else on that testing checklist?
Yeah, a couple more things. There's the idea of not overusing cookies, especially on public sites. Too many cookies can sometimes slow things down.
Right.
They also test how the website behaves under different cookie settings a user might choose in their browser, like if someone blocks third-party cookies, for example. Does the site still work reasonably well? And finally, kind of a meta point, making sure that legitimate website cookies aren't accidentally flagged as malware or spyware by security software. They need to be recognized as normal, necessary parts of how websites function.
Wow, that is a pretty detailed process. It sounds like developers need some help with all this.
Yeah.
Are there specific tools or like browser plugins they use for testing cookies?
Oh, definitely. Modern web browsers actually have pretty powerful built-in developer tools. You can usually inspect cookies, see their values, expiration dates, and sometimes even modify them right there.
Okay.
But beyond that, yes, there are lots of browser extensions and plugins designed specifically for managing and testing cookies. You mentioned a couple earlier, Chrome Cookie Manager. EditThisCookie for Chrome. Things like that give you a more user-friendly interface to view and fiddle with cookie data.
You mentioned fiddling with them or editing them.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through a quick example? Like how would someone actually do that with a plugin and why would they? What's the testing purpose?
Sure, let's imagine you're testing a website, maybe that demo site we talked about, demo.guru99.com/v4.
Okay.
You log in with a test account. Then you'd click on your cookie editor plugin icon in Chrome. It would show you a list of all the cookies that website has set for you.
Right.
You might spot a cookie related to your session. Maybe it has your username in it or some kind of session ID number. For testing purposes, you could use the plugin to just change that value, maybe change the username to something else, or alter the session ID.
Okay.
And you save the change. Now, if you refresh the web page, you watch closely. How does the site react to this modified, potentially invalid cookie? Does it still think you're logged in? Does it log you out? Does it show an error message?
I see.
This kind of tampering helps developers check if the website is properly validating the information it gets back from cookies and how it handles unexpected or maybe even malicious changes. It's basically probing for security weaknesses and making sure the site is robust.
That's a really clear way to see how testing works in practice. Now, we've talked a lot about cookies, but I often hear the word session used in the same breath. Are cookies and sessions the same thing, or is there a key difference?
Ah, good question. They're very closely related, often work together, but they are definitely distinct concepts. The main differences boil down to where the data is stored, how long it lasts, and sort of how they get started.
Okay, break that down for us. Storage first.
Right. Cookies, as we've said, are stored client-side. They're files on your computer. Sessions, on the other hand, are stored server-side. The data lives on the website's actual server.
Got it. Client versus server. What about lifespan?
A cookie's lifespan is set by that expiration date we talked about. Could be short, could be long. A session typically only lasts for the duration of your active visit. When you close your browser, the session on the server usually ends and the data is cleared.
So sessions are generally more temporary than persistent cookies.
Usually, yes, although you can configure sessions to last longer sometimes. Now, how they start. Cookies just get sent by the server when you visit. There's no special command needed usually. But with sessions, in many web programming languages like PHP, the developer has to explicitly start a session using a specific function, like session start, before they can store or retrieve session data.
Okay, an explicit start for sessions. What about how much data they can hold?
Cookies have a pretty strict size limit, typically around 4 kilobytes, which isn't very much data, really.
Maybe.
Yeah. Sessions, because they're stored on the server, have much larger potential limits, usually just constrained by the server's available memory, so they can hold significantly more information.
So generally, sessions can store more stuff than cookies.
That's correct. And there's a dependency relationship, too. A website can use cookies without using sessions at all, but sessions often rely on cookies to work.
How so?
Well, typically, when a session starts on the server generates a unique session ID. It then sends this ID back to your browser and stores it in a cookie.
Ah, the link.
Exactly. That session ID cookie is then sent back to the server with every subsequent request you make during that visit. The server uses that ID to look up your specific session data on its end, so the cookie acts like a key to unlock the session data stored server-side.
Okay, that makes the connection clear. What about getting rid of them?
Right. For cookies, there isn't usually one specific delete cookie command in the programming. The common way is to set the cookie's expiration date to sometime in the past, which tells the browser to get rid of it immediately. For sessions, there's typically a direct function, like session destroy in PHP, that explicitly tells the server to wipe out all the data associated with that session.
Fascinating distinction. Okay, so to wrap up our deep dive into this world of cookies, what are the absolute key takeaways, the things we should really remember?
Okay, let's distill it. First, remember a cookie is just that small piece of info, a text file that a web server stores on your computer.
Got it. Small text file.
Second, cookie testing is that essential process developers use to make sure cookies are created right, work correctly, and are secure in your browser.
Testing is key.
Third, the 3 main parts of a cookie: the server name that sent it, its lifetime or expiration, and the actual value, often that unique ID.
Name, lifetime value.
Yep. Fourth, the 2 main types: session cookies, which are temporary and vanish when you close your browser, and persistent cookies, which stick around longer.
Session versus persistent. Check.
And finally, just remember where they live: in text files on your hard drive, and the exact spot depends on your web browser.
Perfect summary. Well, this has been a really, really insightful look into the often invisible world of website cookies. It's kind of amazing to realize how these tiny bits of data are just so fundamental to almost everything we do online.
It really is, isn't it? And maybe next time you're browsing, just take a second to think about those cookies being passed back and forth. What little bits of information might they be holding about your visit? And how is that subtly shaping your experience right now? It's a pretty interesting layer of the web we all navigate every single day.
CTSS Academy Podcast, where ideas ignite and futures fall.